Okay, so I'm going to be recording some video lectures today for class. So while I was at it, I thought I would do a little video recording instead of typing out all the little things about this interesting spreadsheet that Brian sent out. I went ahead and reformatted this just a little bit so that could make some comparisons, quickly kind of group things. I also deleted some other CRAR BFA up here, which I'm assuming was some old degree that didn't have any majors since 2010 or 11. So I just deleted that. Not really worth looking at that. So I just wanted to explain, before I send this out to everybody, what I did and why I did it, see if it would be helpful. The first thing, my apologies to the art historians. I think all of this is really focused on what we're doing on the BFA side of things. But I did take the BA and just isolated it here so we could look at the art history numbers across the board. And I isolated these BAs because looking at these numbers, I'm assuming this is all going away, right? And that's being phased out. All right, so let's go into the BFA. So I've reorganized this so we have animation design. I think there are questions here about, how these programs would grow, or, are they, where's the sustainability and things like that. But for the most part, I don't think there's too many issues. I will say I found a couple of places where the majors here were somewhere between 200 and 150, and all of a sudden, after being here, they went to 62. I'm assuming this is a typo and should be 162. And then I've taken all the drawing, painting, drawing, sculpture, transmedia, and I've grouped these all together. I'll come back to these in a second. I put photography by itself because that's kind of the way everyone seems to be thinking of it, is the way it's set up as an area. And I'd never really heard about this scientific media design. I just left it there. So down here at the bottom, I have the illustration emphasis. It was originally up here in the list. And I put it down here for a comparison. One, I want to be able to look at the numbers, but I also wanted to compare it to the idea of how does illustration relate to what I'm going to call the studio arts programs, right? So we have all these that are kind of media specific, right? Drawing or painting or sculpture or whatever. And they have their own sets of majors and graduation rates. But I guess I was wondering if all these were collapsed down into, say, arts practice. Hypothetically, this might not bear itself out, but I think it's a decent assumption to say if you took all these students and wiped out all these programs and said we have a new degree for you called arts practice, most of these students would find their way into that degree, given the nature of the arts practice and the media that they've chosen to use. So what I've done is added up the number of graduates and majors that came out of this, and I've called it hypothetical arts practice. So let's pretend these didn't exist and that these went all the way through. And on one level, I wanted to do this so we could look at my concern with these individual degrees is these numbers come from Office of Institutional Research. So if an administrator wants to see the health of a program, this is where they're going to get their numbers, right? And I am concerned for a healthy visual arts down the road, if they get into a budget pinch, they're going to look at some of these and say, why are we supporting programs that have, just a couple of majors or graduates or no graduates, right, in them? And I don't quite understand, sculpture and transmedia, are they being brought together, the same thing? So what I've done is just add all these up so that I could look at the hypothetical health of a combined studio arts practice degree. And these numbers look pretty comparable, right? So when I look at, some of these numbers here, within just the past couple of years, 16 graduates in any of these. I would say as an outsider listening to the discussion, it sounds like studio is much more anemic as it relates to numbers and majors than maybe they are if it wasn't parsed so finely into these different programs, right? So 14, 16, 16, 14. The one issue here certainly would be this last year of just 6 graduates. And this might be, I don't know if this is counting the whole calendar year. So if these numbers will fill in a little bit more, but based on these others, it seems pretty accurate. So, it's not my place to decide this. It's up to the studio, obviously. But I would just say, as kind of an outside person that wants to make sure that the strength of the department is seen in the activity of the faculty as well as the numbers that come into these spreadsheets, this would cause me concern. This is a way to maybe a more accurate description of the health of the program than when I look at all these different things with smaller numbers. You can throw stones at me if you like, but this is just looking at the numbers. This is the way I feel about it. And the last thing I'll say that's of interest here is, this curiosity of how illustration maybe affects studio. And the one thing, I'm a numbers geek, so if I look at these, so here we had 16 graduates with the total of these, and then this one we had 18 and 18 and 18. So all these, we almost the same number of graduates, but obviously the difference we're seeing is that this number is growing and this number is shrinking. This could just be an anomaly. It could be its own thing, but there might be a correlation that we're seeing here between the total number of graduates that we can expect within these two disciplines, if you want to think of it that way, between studio and illustration, and where those students are ending up as far as it relates to the majors that they're choosing. Okay, so anyways, I will send this little video and attach this revised spreadsheet. If it helps you kind of think about the numbers in a certain way, happy to answer any questions you might have.